I will step in for him. Randy, if you can make it back, let us know. If not, I will go ahead and get started welcoming everyone to today's AI Community of Interest for Strategy Professionals. I know if Randy was able to be here, he would thank you all for attending, and know that our other co-sponsors, Transformative and the Army Strategists Association, welcome you to today's session. So we are very pleased that you could take time to attend. I believe this is our third installment of our AI strategy webinars. They're always free of charge. Welcome to everyone. Our goal is to establish a monthly forum where we can learn together about the technical revolution unfolding before us. Of specific interest to our team is gaining a shared understanding of the impacts, benefits, and barriers that must be overcome to take advantage of this new reality. So before I go any further, Randy, are you able to join us and say a few words, or shall I continue on? I think he might still be having technical difficulty. Okay, so we will continue on. Let's get started. The presentation will run for about 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. The session is being recorded, but the recording will be turned off before the Q&A session. And we'll make an announcement when the recording stops so that you can feel comfortable asking questions in a non-attributional environment. Or you can enter your questions in the chat at any time and I will ask them on your behalf at the end of the presentation, or you can raise your hand at the end of the presentation and engage with Nick directly. So today, I'm very excited to introduce Nick Hadjinicolaou from Australia, who will talk to us about navigating the AI revolution, steering towards a responsible future. Nick is the current and founding president of the International Association for Strategy Professionals Australia chapter. He has over 30 years of strategic consulting, project, and portfolio management experience, having spent 9 years as the founding program director and associate professor of the Master of Project Management program at Torrens University, Australia. Nick's previous senior leadership and strategic roles include portfolio management, digital transformation, agile implementations, ICT management, business management, senior stakeholder management, and consulting roles for various organizations such as IBM, Telstra, Three Pillars, Asia Pacific, Business SA, the state government, NCVER, Torrens University, Australia, and he is currently with BAE Systems Australia as an enterprise agile delivery lead. Nick also holds several project management and generative AI industry certifications, and in 2021 became the first IASP strategic management professional in Australia. So with that, please welcome Dr. Nick Hadjinicolaou.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for that, and welcome everyone. I see some familiar faces, and thank you for joining wherever you are in the world. I think we've got quite a broad spectrum of people. A little bit, I just wanted to add just a little bit about what I've been doing just in AI, and specifically, I've been involved with a lot of certifications, and I do enjoy teaching, but I also enjoy learning. And I think the best way to learn is to get involved and do some of the training and different certifications. But I've been involved with the generative AI. We've been doing some research over the last 18 months about the impact of generative AI on the strategy profession. But I've also been involved with looking at artificial intelligence to predict organizational agility, and this thing called explainable AI, which is, working through how AI is actually, making decisions. Over the last 18 months, I've probably spent about 100 hours actually listening to podcasts and a lot of information. I've got a lot of information and way too much information in these slides. I have about 50 slides, so I'm going to flick through a few quite quickly, but it's really, my goals. My goals today are really to do a recap, and I just want to remind people that we've had two already. Mark Bills presented on the implications of human machine collaboration, and we had a a great presentation by Kevin about a primer. So I do encourage people to go back and have a look at those. And you might be asking, well, why are we talking about ethics and governance today? Through our research, we had over 100 respondents from all over the world, and certainly what came up is the greatest concerns that people were having around misinformation, the lack of contextual understanding, but also the ethical implications. So we're going to cover that today. So my plan for today is really to provide a forum for some discussion, provide an update since there's a lot that's happened since our last presentations, talk about the ethical concerns, and certainly try to make it as interesting as possible. So just a quick recap for those that might have missed the last couple of sessions, really, why, covering off here, why, what's this explosion, what's this GPT explosion been all about? And certainly, there are 1 million users in just 5 days, and it was pasted all over the news in pretty well every country. Certainly here in Australia, it was all about this ChatGPT becoming the most popular search engine. There was a lot of posts about ChatGPT now being able to access up-to-date information, and I'll explain that in just a minute. And certainly, there was a big investment by Microsoft in the order of $10 billion. And I'm going to put that into some context a bit later on, and I'm going to come back to, what does that represent as far as the total revenues that are being made in this space. Okay, so I just wanted to explain and put a slide together here just to try to put things into different contexts, and because people have been hearing about ChatGPT and what is this ChatGPT versus generative AI versus OpenAI? Okay, so I've just put together a quick little diagram to explain that there are a number of large tech companies, OpenAI being one of them, and being a large startup. You certainly got the likes of Google, Microsoft, Apple, these tech companies, and they're producing new AI products, but also they're building into their existing products. Okay, so it's starting to become and get everywhere. There's no avoiding it. And when we talk about AI and generative AI products and versions, certainly OpenAI is the ChatGPT. It's been in the media. It's been around for a long time, and it first started out with ChatGPT 1, 2, 3, 3.5. Currently, it's up to ChatGPT 4 Turbo, and then each of the other companies have released their own version. So if you go onto Google, you can use Bard, which is a free chatbot. Microsoft has just released their new Bing Copilot, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute as well, which is also free. So, Apple have been working on this thing called Ajax and Apple GPT, which is yet to be released. So there's rumours that will be released later this year. And certainly there are many others, include this thing called Claude AI and Perplexity, and both of those have become very popular, and certainly Perplexity is one of my favourites. So just to recap, and we talk about AI and we talk about generative AI, and I just thought I'd put this diagram there's a lot more information in the previous presentation, so I'm not going to go into any of this detail, but just for completeness, I thought I'd include this slide. And also just explain also where AI, machine learning, and deep learning, these subsets. Okay, so when we hear the words GPT or ChatGPT, GPT stands for this thing called generative pre-trained transformer, and I'm going to talk about the training and what that means. And often you hear these words chatbot, and chatbot is just short for chat robot. Okay, so it's a term that you should be becoming more and more comfortable with. Putting things into perspective too, I thought I'd just pull up a slide about where the spend is. So in each of those areas, certainly, there's over just last year, and I asked Bart, and you'll see many examples in this slide pack about examples that I've used I've used ChatGPT to actually generate information and generate some of these slides. So just last year, we're talking $560 billion. So it's a big number, and there's certainly a lot of work going on in each of the different areas of AI. So computer vision certainly is right up there at the top, and followed by natural language and machine learning. So I thought I'd provide that. I asked Claude AI to give me some of the a list of chatbots and a list of when they were launched and some of the key features. You'll see down the bottom there, Claude AI and Perplexity AI, focused on harmless, helpful, and honest dialogue there. And I think there's been a gap, and so that there's been new products that have been generated. When this came back, I thought, well, hang on, ChatGPT is not an Anthropic product, OpenAI, and so this is one of the first example of where generative AI doesn't always get it right. Okay, so it's important that when you're using and playing with the tools, that it's going to provide some misinformation. So it's really about questioning and using other chatbots or other sources to confirm, what it is it's saying. So I asked Claude, why do you think ChatGPT was developed by Anthropic? Okay, and this is the response that I got. It said, I apologize, I made a mistake, and I was quite surprised. I was actually quite surprised in this, but this is the sort of thing that you'll get. And it then thanked me, for catching my error. I'll update my knowledge to reflect that ChatGPT. And I did that query again, and it came back, with the right answer. So that was an example and a quite interesting example where information's changing, as people providing feedback. And what we've seen over the last 18 months is a lot more development going into that feedback that's being provided, a lot more feedback about what we're calling explainable AI. If you ask it to provide an improvement on the paragraph, it'll, not all, but some of the chatbots now will give you an explanation about what's changed and why they've changed it and how they've improved it. Okay, so we've got this situation. So ChatGPT has come along, and it's been a major disruptor all over the world. And I just thought I'd just pause there and give you a question to make this a little interactive, and I'd like to know what you think. Why was ChatGPT such a major disruptor? And I understand we can put things into the chat. So if you want to just type something into the chat about thinking about why you think it was a major disruptor, I'll just give you a couple of minutes. So there are a lot of reasons, and certainly I think, ChatGPT, it's the first time it's made major news. We've seen major developments in technology. I'm not seeing too much in the chat.
We do have some things in the chat, Nick. We have a few responses for you.
Yep.
One says, having one answer made people feel confident. Another person said, IT changes are often consumer driven. The consumer hype around ChatGPT is driving business interest. Another person said it made search engines obsolete, mega search engines surpassing LexisNexis. Another person said easy to integrate. Another person said first free large language model.
Yep. Excellent. All right. Okay. So I think very much, it's, people have equated to being a search engine, but some of the things that I want to point out, I just so with this AI stuff, I think one thing that's important is that you have been playing with it on your phones for a long time. We've had generative AI on your phone, predictive text. So when you do text, unless you've still got a Nokia, or a Motorola, you'll find that when you're doing a text message, you'll get some options for predictive text. So it's been on our phones, it's been around us for a long time, and there are a lot of events that have happened since 1943. But what's happened is the power of the GPUs, or the graphic processing units, this thing called Moore's law, and I've got some links for more information that people can look up a bit later. But it's really, this Moore's law says that the speed and the capability of computers doubles every 2 years. So what we're seeing is this enormous improvement in what's been available in terms of resources and computer power, but also cloud computing, like the shift to cloud computing. There's been a large impact of the pandemic, so we've seen probably an acceleration of technology for more than 5 or 6 years, I would say. We've sped up the development of technology as a result of having to work from home, and so we've got, the word Zoom has become a household name. Everybody knows what Zoom is now, but before the pandemic, probably only if you worked in academia would you have known what Zoom was. So that's meant that there's been a large reduction of cost of disk space and this explosion of cloud computing. And I think in 2022, for the first time, what we're seeing is this generative AI being available for general use. And the last point that I've got there is about there's been growing investments by the tech giants, like as a result of some profits that have been made from the tech acceleration, but also it's about what's the next thing that's going to make them competitive, what's the next thing that's going to improve. I've just got a quick photo here just to show you how quickly things, to put it into perspective in terms of a photo. In October 22, this is what generative AI on the left was able to generate, and in October 2023, it is just the improvements that have been made in so many different areas. And what's happened is there's been an explosion, not only in that, but also explosion in the amount of material that's been available. So it's quite hard, has been quite hard to kind of keep up with it. But if you look on YouTube, there are enormous amount, and I've got a number of links, but there are enormous amount of good videos that are available. And a couple of things that I want to highlight and explain is, when we talk about the chatbots, there's this training data. So in 2020, we saw 175 billion parameters. So that was 10 million times larger than what it was in 1980. Okay. Now then, onward from there, with ChatGPT 4, the training data increased to 500 billion words. Okay, so that this concept of training data versus the chatbot operational fit, the use of it. So if you're using Bard, or if you're using Bing or ChatGPT, there are the features that you have when you use the product, and then there's what sits behind it as far as the databases that it's using and the training data. Okay, so that's important. But that crawling of the web, so it's gone out, not all of this information has come from all of these different sources. Come from Wikipedia, it's come from Google, it's come from Reddit, it's come from lots of different places, and this crawling of information and gathering of this information, that's also been around for a long time. Okay, so I've provided a link there to this thing called Common Crawl, and this Common Crawl is a website that has got data sets and crawling of this data that is they've been doing that for a long time. And one important thing to make, one important point to make, is that the limits are not well understood, and it's not, once it does this crawl and it creates this database, it's not like they know if there was a bad piece of data in that database, they don't know where to find it, and it's not well understood. So this data and ChatGPT 4 with 500 billion words, an important point to make is that data was pre-generative data. Okay, so once we had ChatGPT and all of this generated information has come about, this generated data. So when we do the next crawl, which actually only just kicked off last week, I understand. So OpenAI kicked off their GPT-5 crawl, which will take in the order of 90 to 100 days. And I just want to highlight how many resources go into this. So we're talking about 25,000. It's probably more now, but 25,000, computers, GPUs. So it's a lot of computers that go off and do this. And as part of this, as part of some of the sustainability concerns, it's about the cost of this in the way of energy. So it needs enormous amount of water to keep the GPUs cool while it does this, and there's an enormous amount of carbon that's released. So there are a couple of big things, but the data will grow because now we will have generated data that's being collected. Okay, so I just wanted to make those points. I've got a slide. The next slide is just talking about the differences and changes. So we've got, and this is just for ChatGPT, so that's not the other chatbots that are also available. But you'll see there about when the training data was trained to. So, one of the issues that has been raised is really when you query ChatGPT, you're only getting information prior to that date. So a number of the other chatbots and I think you're getting information, up-to-date information, because it's also going off to the internet. And around the prompt inputs, initially we sort of just started with text, and then we had text and images, and now we've got text to images and text to speech, and what we call this thing called multimodal. Okay, so you'll hear that term, and it's important to understand that. I'll just quickly put up also just this prompt sheet. So when we're using these, when we use ChatGPT, it's all about your ability to prompt, and we've seen new roles, things called prompt engineers, and certainly it's about, what do you want the information to, who do you want the information to come from, what sort of tasks do you want, like what information are you asking the chatbot, and in what kind of format. So the better you get at playing with ChatGPT or any of the other chatbots, and being specific about what you want, the better the results. But also what's come about, so what we've seen in the last 12 months, we've seen the ability to upload files. So we can now upload PDFs. You can create different profiles. It records your past queries, so you can edit your past queries. And certainly Microsoft and others have come up with this thing called Copilot, which actually prompts you. It actually prompts you for suggestions about what that next query should be. Okay, and so that's all been a whole lot of background just to kind of get everybody up to speed that wasn't at the last one, and so apologies if that's taken a little bit of time, but certainly we're seeing it grow. The uses are growing. It's enormous use in customer service and marketing, product development, certainly in researching, certainly in these YouTube videos that I've seen. It often mentions about research and medical research. So, for instance, one example that is often cited is that there's some 9,000 papers that are produced on different cancer research that the doctors just don't have time to read. So this concept of having a co-pilot or a tool to be able to keep up to date, with some of this stuff. And certainly what we call, there's a lot of good things, there's a lot of good areas, and there's a lot of good things, but also we're also seeing generative AI used in a lot of bad ways also. So when I say some of the bad ways, some are in terms of cyber crimes, we're seeing it used in producing fake emails, fake videos, fake impersonations, and we'll talk about that. So but we'll go back to the chat box. Go back to the chat for a second, and ask you now. Certainly, what are some of your ethical concerns? If you've been using it, playing with it, reading about it, watching YouTube videos, what are some of your ethical concerns? if we could just throw that in the chat over the next, or just allow people a minute or two just to put something in the chat. See, there was something in the chat before about, yeah, it's being exploited, certainly to scam people, and that is correct. Certainly ChatGPT has been used to scam people. I think also they're also using ChatGPT to help prevent the scamming around developments. Robin, has there been any? I can't see it on my screen here.
So we have here, it's been exploited by bandits to scam people, bias, incorrect information, hallucinations, blind faith in answers provided by generative AI, over-reliance, teaching on what's their motivation, identity theft, systems integrity, lack of oversight, and too big to fail, lack of transparency and accountability. So lots of ethical concerns that we've noted from our viewers today.
Good. I think.
Oh,
I think
another one just added: fraud.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think we got most of them. And again, I wanted to have some examples and show you some examples. So this is, I've gone and asked Microsoft Bing on this as I was developing these slides on the 6th of January after Christmas when I had nothing to do. I asked it about, well, what are the ethical concerns? And this is what it's come back with. Deep fakes, and I'll explain some of these in just a minute. Misuse, biases, truthfulness, hallucinations. So we talk about hallucinations, and you hear that all the time. Really, a big part of hallucinations is the bad data that's in that training data that's been collected. That is, bad data's been around, on Google for a long time, but there's a difference when we get it as an answer to a question. And certainly we don't know enough. We don't know enough about the models or the future of the models, the new features and the implications. And one of the other things really there I put down the bottom is job augmentation, and that there's risk of unemployment, but what does it mean? What does it mean for employment? And our next community of interest session will be actually covering that topic, and so there's a link there. And I was at a coffee shop actually, a couple of weeks ago, and it's making it into the media. And when we talk about deep fakes, so this is what we mean. This is talking about fake porn. So it's stuff that's hitting, and in the article that was written, that in the US. This act has been introduced, the Preventing Deep Fakes of Intimate Images Act, quite a long name for an act, and it was introduced, in the US. So I found that quite interesting, and certainly you'll see, this issue of deep fakes, these photos that were generated, that went viral, and just before trial. So it was not only the actual creation of the photos, but it's about when they're released. And so when you look at some of these photos, I think whether they're real or not. You look at the one on the left. The hand looks a bit unusual, but it is hard to tell. So there are regulations, and there's stuff that's being done. So people can't do that. So if we think about the categories, so now I've broken it down, and I'm going to talk about categories of ethical concerns, and I'm going to focus on the organisational ones. So from an organisational perspective, but if we think of the different lenses, really there are lenses as an individual. So what are our concerns as an individual? What are our concerns as a community? And then what are the concerns around the organisation? And they've been grouped here into copyright infringement, misinformation, bias, privacy, transparency, and fairness. And I'll quickly cover what this means. As far as guiding principles, what we want is we want the use of generative AI to be responsible, ethical, and compliant with relevant laws and regulations. And I'm going to talk about these laws and regulations because they are different, a little bit different in every country. So we talk about copyright infringement. I think everybody's got a good handle on that one. We've got this mega training database and all this information that's gone into it, and some of it, is copyrighted. Okay, so when we are using the chatbot, we could be potentially getting copyrighted material. Okay, so there's legal issues of this text and information papers that are being used without permission. Misinformation, so deep fakes, these photos that I've just showed, it's false or misleading information, which is going to have a wide range of negative impacts and could lead people into making decisions based on inaccurate information and harm to reputation. So when we talk about bias and privacy, okay, so an important thing is it's about what's gone into the database here. So there's a lot of information that's gone in, a lot of information from places like Reddit that, people get onto Reddit and might be on something and be complaining or there are bias. There might be biases there. There'll be biases as far as information that's not collected. So a lot of the countries that are low in digital maturity are not going to have a lot of digital information, so that there's biases there. So it's important just to be aware about that, and in fact it could result in discrimination. Around privacy, so generative AI could be used to generate text that creates personal information. Okay, so that's definitely not a good thing. So it might harm individuals and organisations. Around the areas of transparency, it's important that we are transparent about the use of generative AI. So in education and academia, we want, there are policies. So there are some subjects that we encourage students to use generative AI, and there are other subjects that we're saying it's not permitted. So there are different tasks and different assignment tasks. When students graduate, we want them to be good prompt engineers. So we want them to be using generative AI to learn the skills and learn that. But at the same time, there are some tasks like closed book exams that we're not going to allow for generative AI to be used. So it's about being aware of the potential risks that are associated with the tools. And really verifying the accuracy of the text. And I had an example prior, and I've got another couple of examples about this accuracy and the way that we should treat it. Around fairness, so we want to ensure that AI generated content does not discriminate against any individual based on their protected characteristics such as race, gender, age, or disability. So at the moment, what we're seeing is there's a number of cases that are starting to surface in the media and in the courts. And more recently, just a few weeks ago, I learned about OpenAI being sued by the New York Times for copyright infringement. Okay, so apologise for the busyness of this slide. I don't like putting a lot of text in, particularly small text, but I've provided the link here for people to go and have a look. And I found this article of particular interest, and the reason, a couple of reasons. First of all, the New York Times are suing OpenAI and Microsoft, alleging that they've stolen copyrighted content. Okay, now OpenAI are not denying this because it's had this huge training database and this huge pool that's gone on and collected everything and anything. So they're negotiating for licensing fees, and so that's what we're seeing at the moment. And the interesting thing will be moving forward over the next year or two is, how much money is it going to take to pay for all these licenses that are going to be needed. But there's a couple of other things that I found particularly interesting for those that can, for those that know what a VCR is. There could be some younger people that have never had to use a VCR, but back in 1984, there was a case between Sony and Universal Studios around using VCRs, where people were using them to record their favourite TV shows, or they were going out to dinner on a Saturday night and they were recording a movie that they wanted to watch. Now, that case was ruled as a thing called fair use, and saying that the machines had non-infringing uses, and it ruled that okay, and it changed the industry, and it changed, people, it put it on to the people doing the copyright and the copying. There was another, big case in 2005 around a case around the Authors Guild and Google, when Google started scanning digital books. And so in 2013, it was ruled that words in books are being used in a way that they've never been used before. Okay, so one thing that I found interesting here is, the case was started in 2005 and it was resolved in 2013. So if we've got a case against OpenAI now in 2023, potentially it may not be until 2030 or 2035 until it's resolved. So these things take a long time. But I've just included in the text there what the judge, decision about this advances of progress of arts and sciences, while maintaining respectable consideration for the rights of authors. So, and there have been other cases, and again, some people will remember Napster, and I certainly was a user at the time. And this was the ability to copy and the sharing of music files, and that was ruled against Napster, and we saw the shutdown of Napster in 2001. So theoretically, one of these cases could, one of these judges could say, well, we're going to shut down OpenAI. I'm not saying that we'll do that, but that's some of the history there. But I've provided all the links, and people can go back and have a bit of a read. I just want to highlight some other things and some other information, and I'm providing this for information only. There are a lot of standards that are around in associations. So certainly Dharma is one that provides standards in data management. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is really about that, that privacy and the principles around data and the importance of data in organisations. There's certainly been a lot of worldwide developments in regulation, and again, I'm providing this as links. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but these are some really good links that contain information about what each of the countries are doing and what the state of AI is. And so the further slide there on links, and certainly there's been a lot of different things that are going on. In Canada, there's been a directive around automated decision making. So, that's a really good read. In the US government just last week as well, there have been some major announcements. Okay, so again, providing the links there for you to go and have a look at these if they're of interest to you. I'm not going to talk too much more. The other one there to be aware of is the GDPR, and that's the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. And once again, providing the links for you to have a look. I want to quickly come back now to this $10 billion, which, like I referenced it, it sounds like a lot of money. And certainly I thought, well, let's try to put this into perspective. Okay, so again, just last week, Microsoft surpasses Apple as number one. It's valued at $3 trillion. So, and you can see there, when we talk about the pandemic and the way the pandemic has accelerated the use and development of technology, this is happened to most tech companies that that have ended up increasing. But I thought I'd ask Bart for the top 10 companies in generative AI, and certainly here's an example of and I looked at this and I thought, it's telling me that the Google share value was 2,797, and I certainly thought, I looked down, I thought that doesn't look right. So I did go off to the stock exchange to find out, and it was sitting on the 17th of January, it was sitting at $142. So again, that's just an example. Is when you get information, you want to be critical and you want to think about, well, you know, is that correct? You know, I want to double check that. I want to go off and have a look. And I actually, in the first instance, I went off to Perplexity, a chatbot, to ask it the same question, provide a list of top 10 AI companies, and it came back with that same number. So certainly, it's interesting. So that number must be somewhere that is in a report or somewhere that it is picking it up. Just want to highlight too, you know, some other chatbots and again, misinformation. You know, I asked Google Bard to provide a list, and it told me that Bard, which in fact is a Google chatbot, is one that's come from Microsoft. Okay, so there are going to be these errors, and certainly I just want you to go and really double check. I had a look at Bard and certainly what's new in Bard. So I've included this, and I've just included in the top right this notion of Bard being an experiment. So what that's about is when you sign up for Bard, you're signing up to the terms and conditions. So what all of these chatbots are saying is that they're all still in training, still in experimental mode. So if there's anything that does go wrong, it's sort of trying to protect them for anything. But one thing I found interesting is on the 1st of February, just last week, it's got the ability to create images. So I thought, well, okay, I'll try this out. I asked for a picture of a cat on a boat, and it gave me this nice picture of a cat on a boat. I asked it to create me a picture of Donald Trump in an orange suit in a boat, and it didn't let me do that. It said, look, I can't generate images of that. Try asking to generate some other images. I asked what Donald Trump would look like. It gave me this other response that it understands my curiosity about Donald Trump, but it was unable to generate descriptions due to its policy. I asked it just for a picture of a man, and it gave me a man in an orange suit. So, there are new features, and certainly it is there. Couple of quick slides, and I know that I'm nearly running out of time. Certainly, we're seeing it everywhere. So if you just bought a new Samsung Galaxy, this is available now, and these are all the things that are available in the Samsung. And like all these things, it's about who's just released the next phone or who's just released the piece of technology. Certainly, it will be trying to get Apple users come over, and I've got two young boys, and the use of an Apple phone or Samsung phone is a bit like a religion. Once you're an Apple phone user or an iPhone user, you're probably an iPhone user for life. So I did ask Microsoft Bing, well, what are Apple doing in this area of generative AI? So that there's quite a lot happening by Apple, and it's rumored that these are being released, later this year. And then I asked another engine, I asked Perplexity the same question, and so there's a number of citations there. I think it's important to be watching the race. So it really there's so much of this race that amongst the big tech companies, and there's a lot of new startups. So I thought I'd provide that. Pretty well much every single tech company is doing something if they want to remain in business, if they don't want to become a Kodak. And for those of be familiar with Kodak, not believing in the digital photography, that certainly put them out of business. So it's about, well, what is each of these companies doing as far as advancing and playing in this AI race. I think one of the things that I found interesting in watching a lot of the YouTube videos is that certainly the resources that these companies have got, 25,000 GPUs to do a training data run, it is not the types of resources that the universities have got. So, they are at a distinct advantage. And certainly, if you watch any of the academic presentations, there's certainly they're not happy about the way that they're really been throwing compute and throwing power to provide these they're not solving a scientific problem is kind of the message that I got through. So what are some of the solutions, just to finish off before we go to question time? Again, have a play, ask ask the bot, ask the chat bot, well, okay, what do I do? And this is what it come back with: education and awareness. So just, be learning more, be watching more of the videos, be selective as well of the YouTube videos. There are a lot of videos that are really about promoting products and getting users and trying to sell stuff. So I would probably steer towards the university platform ones, the academic ones, the reputable, all of the reputable YouTube videos that have been recorded. There are a lot. There are a real lot. Data security and privacy. Be mindful of information that you're putting in to chat. Where, if you're using it for some financial analysis, what organizations are doing is just taking out any of that personal data and still using it, but using a subset of it to find a solution. And certainly organizations are getting private clouds so that they'll be using this technology, but using it in a way that they're protected. Okay. And the last point there about clear usage policy. So every organization should have a generative AI acceptable use policy and, risk management practices that are around guidelines for people within organizations. So for me, for some of my final tips, really, it's important that you implement usage, acceptable use policies, data sharing policies to educate employees, establishing safety guardrails, so risk management procedures, which are an extension of already, what would be risk management processes and procedures within organizations. Have a regular update of the practices and privacy and security, verify the accuracy and reliability. So if you're getting something from a chatbot, well, use another chatbot to ask the same question, or go to the citation that it's pulled the information off and see where it's come from. I encourage people to play, and I do encourage people to set up a separate email. So there are a number of these free tools, but it's best to keep it separate. If you're playing and download an app on your phone, it gives you the ability to put in a query, email the response to yourself, so that you've got, you're capturing that. I've got a number of slides that I've got some articles that I've found very useful, YouTube videos that I've, amongst the better YouTube videos that I've found, so that they're covered in the slides, and certainly a lot of information by all the big four, Deloitte, McKinsey, they're all PwC, they're all got a lot of really good material and reports that are available. So, there is an enormous amount. So it's just about making your way through some of these and around support slides. Certainly have a disclaimer, and it's, again, any of this information that's provided is from information only, which is a good practice. And I've got my contact details, so feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk some more, or if you want some help with acceptable use policies or any other things. And I'm just about out of time, I believe, Robin, so I will hand back to you.
Thank you so much. Are there any final questions? I know we are coming up at the end, but if there are questions, please feel free to raise your virtual hand, come on camera, or put a question in the chat. I'll pause just a moment to see if there's any questions at all. I know there's a lot to say on top of here, Nick. One of the questions